changes is that the averaging on a scale of 0 to 100, that's going to change. It's going to be different. And if we have a student, normal student at Columbia High School, and what we're saying is that these things that are starred are critical, they're essential to a student's learning. And they're showing mastery on all three of these things. But for whatever reason, whether they're ill or they missed or something, they get a really bad score, which in our old system, the lowest that could go would be 0. Just by the nature of averaging and having a 0 to 100 point scale, that student would get somewhere around a C. And this example illustrates that because a student has actually mastered 3 and our system decides to average that, that it's actually an inaccurate reflection of where the student's at. And so that's a big change. It's a big shift because standards-based grading, right at the heart of it is it's an accurate reflection of where a student's at in their learning with critical skills of mastery. And that's really what we want. As parents, we don't really need a C grade. What we want is actually an accurate reflection of where they're at. So in standards-based grading, what it would shift to is that this student, because the teacher and the student know each other very well, and they've measured them on these things, instead of the system taking over and just averaging it out for the grade, the teacher would likely give this student an A, or maybe a B, depending on how critical this was. And that's a more accurate reflection in a standards-based system. The other things that are going to shift, that are going to go away, is that a student, same type of scenario, let's say they start out the school year strong, and I'll just use the same example for lack of making it different, and something happens, there's a major life event, and in a school system, actually, sometimes the major life event is that at the beginning of the school year, it's a little bit lighter. They're introducing things, it's not the heavy meat and potatoes, and so the student starts to struggle. They get a few low grades. Or the major life event could be mono, or something that's actually very real to that family or that kid. And pretty soon, if that student starts to get enough of those lower grades in the old system, what was communicated to the student was the only way that I'm going to get grades that I'm used to, that I got in the past in middle school or last year, which were high grades, that if I'm so low and I've gotten all these zeros, and the system was actually skewed towards 0. There's 50 to 0 was that chasm of all the different levels of failure. And when students were down here, the message that most of them got that struggled is my only option is to just take a D and barely pass, or take my F and just be quiet the rest of the semester and not bother anybody, or even worse, leave the system. And that's not okay. That's not okay with us. So that's going to change. That the old scale was skewed towards failure. And there's no organization that exists that's successful that has that much of their allowable performance to be skewed towards failure. So that's going away in the new system. In the new system, it's actually going to be defined very clearly into equal gradations. And this is all information that we'll be sending parents later today or tomorrow. But the area for failure still exists, along with D and C and B and A. It still exists, but the gradation isn't 50 to 0. It's actually the same exact gradation between the other levels of performance. And the big difference is these levels of performance, we get very specific on mastery. What it takes to master at this level, at this level, this level, this level. And that D and above really is proficient. They're just different levels of proficiency and different levels of mastery. In the past, this is the last one I'll give you as an example. A kid could get a D, but actually go and take a thing like the ISAT or the SAT and score below basic. But in our system, they're getting passing grades. And this is how that would happen. Same student, but instead, they start out the school year, they get the first assignment good, but they start to perform like they're used to, and they get some poor scores. And And they get to a point where they realize, uh-oh, I'm running out of time. If I want to pass this class, so I don't have to do it again, or don't have to go to summer school, I need some help. And so in the past, they would begin to manipulate with the point system. How can I get more points? How can I bring my grade up? And in the past, we allowed for things like extra credit. So they would get maybe an extra credit thing or two. And that ranged all the way from bring more Kleenexes to canned foods to go watch a play. Things that were nice, but definitely not connected to mastery or the skills of mastery. And then also, many of our teachers, bless their heart, they would build in smaller things that maybe weren't like these ones up here that were mastery and really important. They would build in other assignments that weren't necessarily the star type assignments. And that student would get some points. And bring their grade up to be a D, because it would average out and they could actually make it. That level of proficiency for us is critical, and so it's not going to be easier to pass. Many people, what they think is in standards-based grading, that it actually makes it really easy on kids who struggle. It doesn't. It actually higher the bar. We're only including things in this level that are critical for mastery, standards of skill, and knowledge that are important. And so this is going away. This ability to get extra credit is going away. These other assignments that are more behavior-based, like if you're here every day, or you're not tardy, or you turn in this 5 worksheets, the littler things that might be practice or completely unrelated to what's most important, that's also going to be minimized. In our system, we're going to weight assessment and things that are most important. It must be 70% of what's reflected in the grade book is that. And then down here, this stuff, they'll still be able to do that, but only 30% of what's reflected in the grade for this coming year will be allowed to be that kind of stuff. So we're shifting. And in years to come, this will increase, and this will decrease, so that we truly are giving an accurate reflection of student learning. The last piece that actually involves all of this, that we're going to break out, and we actually started doing this work last year, communicating with families around work ethic. And we're one of the only high schools to be doing this as well. And this is on a rubric score of 1 through 4, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. And many of these behaviors, things that kids were given points for in the past, we break out into a separate work ethic score, which is really important for a family, for a student. For example, if a student has a 72% C in the old system, and we just gave that information to parents, that's all you get, but didn't give them work ethic, they wouldn't know if that 72% was, my kid's doing everything that they can, and that's a great effort for that 72% C. Or it may have been a kid who felt like, you know what, I really don't have to try that hard in this class to pull a C. And they could actually do A-level work. In the old system, that wasn't reflected. Now, in the system, in Power School, there's going to be a number that's associated, and it's going to be work ethic. It describes these things that really matter. You know, workplace, readiness, all the things they want in college. They want to know if kids are having a work ethic that's up at the level 4. And so that would tell a parent, my kid really is doing their very best to pull that C. I need to be proud of that. The opposite is also true, and would communicate something very important to parents and to the student. If that's a 1, then it's very clear to that parent that, uh-oh, my kid could actually do a lot better. And that's just a really great conversation to have, and to begin to include that in with standards-based grading is a part of it. So that's kind of where we've been, why we're changing. It's not all of it. There's lots of other things that are flawed in the old traditional system. The main reason that we're shifting, the why, is because the world's best of schools, they're using things like this. And for us to not do this just because the old system's comfortable and it's what people are used to, and not change, that's not okay. We have way too much failure. Our high achieving students aren't as competitive as the places around us, And we sincerely believe that all students can achieve high levels. And these little changes in the system might be confusing at first, difficult to understand, but we're going to do them because it's the right thing to do for kids.